OISTE is the first and only Latino civic education organization in Massachusetts. The Latino Convention 2007 is a nonpartisan event that engages Latinos from across the state in a dialogue that builds universal understanding of how government works and reinforces the importance of Latino input in the decision-making process.
When I was elected, there wasn't a book on how to go be a state representative. I've been in this building once before. There was no OISTE bringing us here to learn, to lobby, to act on it, to set our agenda. It was for a protest. I actually almost got arrested protesting Governor Weld on some budget cut. That was my first and last moment in this building, and I had no idea. I didn't even know where the entrance was. I didn't know where the chamber was. I didn't know where the bathroom was. There was no guidebook on the shelf. I dare say that each of you, with your own personal commitments and your passions and your decision to act on those passions, have asked yourself the same question. Where's the book? I've got this library full of books. Where's the one that tells me, that speaks to my passions, and gives me vector, gives me direction on how to achieve my values, my democracy? In this country, the freedom we have to write our own books.
In the past couple of years has been amazing in terms of voting rights for Latinos and other people of color and people in the city of Boston. He has been a great friend to us, and I'm learning greatly from him and the staff. And I thank him so much for being here today, Mayor Tom Menino.
Come a long way, because of your guidance, your work with us in the city of Boston. We have a better election process today. That was always my goal. I know this is reasonable, but when I heard about the difficulties, I said we have to bring people together. Let's make it work.
How important it is to have OISTE, all of my friends from across the Commonwealth in this building, because when you're here, there is color in the house.
Because we showed in the course of the campaign that we did not have to accept the status quo if we were not satisfied with the status quo. And we are going to have to make the status quo respond to the power we showed in the campaign. That means you being here today and every day, and know that you are welcome. Thank you very much for having me.
I thought a lot about what to say today, and there was one word that kept coming to mind. It's kind of a strange word for Massachusetts, but that word was borders. I mean, that might be a more appropriate word if we were gathered in Texas, California, or maybe even Arizona, where that word has a more tangible and immediate definition. But how could that possibly work for a group of Latinos in Massachusetts? Let me tell you a quick story about just how bizarre life can be in an immigrant community on the border. Growing up in El Paso, my family lived in the shadow of the border. There were 3 big bridges that crossed the smallest river, and they divided 2 countries, 2 large cities, and countless families. I attended the only all-boys Catholic high school in El Paso. It's a small brick building about 5 minutes by car from the Mexican border. About 90% of the 400 students at Cathedral High School were just like me, sons of Mexican immigrants. Every year, Cathedral would send a few students, maybe 3 or 4, on full scholarships to the University of Notre Dame. It was every Mexican mother's dream, ay, por favor, nuestro Señor, to go to Cathedral, to have her sons go to Cathedral to try to get one of those coveted scholarships. Well, in exchange for this relationship, Cathedral adopted the same colors, the same mascot, and the same fight song. So at this small school, just minutes from Mexico, you had a bunch of mostly Mexican boys calling themselves proudly the Fighting Irish. This bizarre relationship was all for the chance, the hope of being able to continue on to college, for that opportunity to move on beyond the border. Even back then, growing up by the border, we quickly learned that borders can be as much about a state of mind than a sovereign state, or a bridge that divides communities. We learned that by reaching beyond those figurative borders, we can really have the kind of discussions and organizing and planning that can bridge communities and people that once seemed so divided and so foreign to each other. I crossed an important psychological border when I left that home in the early 80s and came to Massachusetts for the first time for college. It was all so foreign to me, the people, the weather, the food, and the language. It took me a while to learn to understand Bostonese. It was an incredibly hard time for me, learning and adapting to this new world and culture. But with all of the new challenges came important lessons and new opportunities. That chapter for me in the 80s also introduced me to the first time to the Latino community here in Massachusetts during my work as a producer at Channel 5 for a public affairs program for the Latino community that was back then called Aquí, no longer exists. But from Holyoke to Lawrence and Chelsea, I came to appreciate vibrant and hardworking communities and leaders that were much more diverse than the predominantly Mexican-American community I knew back in Texas. What struck me then about the Latino community here, apart from its mosaic of people from Caribbean and Central American countries, was how despite some commendable efforts, there was little consistent communication and collaboration, especially in different parts of the state. And there certainly were not organizations back then as viable, visible, persistent, and forward-leaning as organizations like Oiste is today. During the years that I lived and traveled throughout Latin America as a foreign correspondent with the Boston Globe, one of the things that I tried to do constantly was to connect the countries and communities in that region of the world with communities here in New England. I found countless stories and countless connections in education, business, healthcare, politics, even in baseball. I knew I would find a way to mention baseball on the opening day of the World Series. Latin America taught me that although the physical borders may exist, economic, cultural, and emotional boundaries don't. Today, thanks largely to technology, the global economy, and the fluidity of ideas and talent across oceans and bridges, the opportunities to communicate, collaborate, and organize are more abundant and valuable than ever before. Massachusetts, with its long, proud, and colorful history of being a home for new Americans and their ideas, should be a beacon for this country and the world for the innovative ways that we can educate and mobilize our communities, especially when it comes to public conversations that we have to recognize the contributions that are made by all of our newest Americans. I believe we now have a unique opportunity with this governor and his own personal and professional expertise and interest in civil rights, with many members of the legislature and people throughout the communities, to create the most innovative, visionary, and diverse state government this Commonwealth has ever witnessed. You know, in the short time that since I was appointed the director of ORI, I've already been struck at the needs and opportunities that exist across the state for more communication and collaboration between our refugee and immigrant communities. I would urge Oiste and all of you to look for ways to bring your talents to ensure more diverse leadership, especially in our media outlets. Keeping in mind that journalism, like government, is another form of public service that needs public pressure to break through its own borders. I congratulate Oiste and all of you for the contributions that you've already made toward a dynamic and focused Latino political agenda. And I look forward to working more closely in the coming weeks, months, and years ahead with all of you to overcome the borders and obstacles, both perceived and real, that we are collectively trying to break through. You know, I find it interesting that the Spanish word for border is frontera. To me, that sounds more like frontier. Something that rather being closed is an image that suggests a wide, expansive field of opportunities. And that's exactly how I think we should approach our organizing. Focused not on the limits of what we have, but on the endless possibilities of what's out there. That's the lesson that I remember every day from my immigrant parents and from the teachers I had back when I was a fighting Irish. And those are the lessons that I try to teach my own immigrant sons. Muchísimas gracias for having me be here, and here's to a wildly successful Latino Convention 2007.
Lo más grande de este mundo siempre me hacen sentir un orgullo profundo.